Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and as always, I'm super excited to be recording this week with a very special guest. This past week, I was away at my work's sales conference, traveling away from my family, but I'll get into that in a little bit with my upcoming guest. I did want to talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking about quite a bit over the last few weeks, and that is just helping other people out. So earlier in life, let's say in my personal and professional career, I tended to, let's say I did everything I could, but I kind of lost my way in certain things, right? Maturity wasn't necessarily there, but I did everything I could. And, having someone there to help you out is definitely super helpful in terms of, pointing in the right direction and kind of helping you get to where you need to get to. I never had, let's say, a mentor of sorts. So as I've gotten older, as I've gotten more experience, and as I've learned more things, I've tried to go out of my way to help out whoever I can along the way, both personally and professionally. So let's say professionally first. I definitely try to help out anybody who looks like they might need help. So if somebody I'm working with, whether it be directly or adjacent or whatever, looks like they're lost or is working through something and they ask for help, I will generally never say no to somebody. I recognize, and I remember years ago when I was in a similar situation, and it's just very, very helpless feeling when you need something, but nobody's there to support you, and you're just kind of on your own and kind of like wandering around. So for me, at this point in my life, I'm 47 years old. I've been working professionally for like 26 years. I recognize that, where I am today is not where I was years ago. And I really want to help out those who are earlier in their career, middle in their career, or even beyond me in their career to help them share my experiences, share everything I've gone through. I mean, that's part of this podcast, right? Is helping other people share their stories to help get their word out, but also at the same time, walk people through both the pluses and minuses of what I've experienced both in my life, personally and professionally. On a personal side, I do try to help out people wherever I can as well. So, as an example, and I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before as well, I do have a passion for personal finance. Growing up, and even like, after I graduated college, I didn't really know that much about, let's say, investing, the stock market, stuff like that. So, as I've gotten older and started, working through a lot of things, obviously I made some mistakes, probably invested in some of the wrong things, but eventually I've kind of figured out a system that works for me. Um, it's taken me a number of years, but I've created a whole like spreadsheet with like models and templates and all that kind of stuff. So I've walked lots of people through it in terms of helping them out and seeing where all their money is, best ways to invest, and even just modeling to say, okay, if I have X dollars today and I want to get Y dollars by whatever year to retire, how do I get there? How much do I need per year? How does it grow and stuff like that? So for me, like I get excited to be able to help people out. Maybe I'm a people pleaser. I mean, I definitely am a people pleaser. But that's probably just part of who I am. But with that said, I do try to help out people wherever I can. And on the flip side, I do feel that by doing this, I do feel strongly about karma. I'm not a religious guy, not a spiritual guy either, but I do feel that like just in general, being good to other people and helping out wherever you can is probably the way to go. Last weekend, went to a Devils hockey game with my younger daughter, and they have the point of the game or point of the intermission where they start throwing T-shirts around. My daughter was super excited. She wanted a T-shirt. She or I did not catch one. Someone sitting about 3 seats over from me caught one. A guy who claimed he was 6'4" caught a small size T-shirt. Looked around and said, "I'm 6'4". I can't wear this size small T-shirt. I managed to catch eyes with him, and I was like, "Hey, I think my daughter would love it if you don't mind." He goes, "Absolutely, love to give it to her." So I like to think that maybe that was the universe give me a little payback, I guess, for some of the good stuff that I've done. But if not, I mean, it is what it is. Again, like to help people out wherever I can. When it works out, that's great. And sometimes it's just to feel good about, helping people out. So that's how life goes. With that said, I do want to remind everybody that the show's Instagram site is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. So if you could follow, like, comment, all the good stuff over there, that would be great. If you want to be a guest one day, if you have any comments about the show, whatever, go to the Instagram. Definitely shoot me a DM. DMs are open. Looking for any kind of feedback or any kind of comments. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can reach the show directly at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. If you have any business inquiries or anything else you want to talk about, send it over there and I'll see how quickly I can get back to you. As always, the show is sponsored by the good boys over at jeffseltzer.com for all of your Jeff Seltzer needs. Definitely check out our friends over at jeffseltzer.com. Lastly, a reminder to everybody, the show is available on all podcast platforms. You can find this show in video on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod, as well as on Spotify. Additionally, from an audio perspective, you can find the show as always over at Spotify, YouTube, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find this show. With that said, I did want to introduce my guest for this week. I'm really excited to see once again. I saw her in person earlier this week at a work function. Now I get to see her virtually. So welcome, Jewel Jones, to the show.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm super excited.
Awesome, Jewel. Thank you so much for coming on. With that said, I do want to give yourself an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell the listening folks at home in their car, wherever they are, who Jewel Jones is.
That's a great question. Again, thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm Jewel Jones. I am an advocate for success and diversity. I'm a mother and a wife, more importantly. I am a recent fitness enthusiast, a wannabe runner, and a wannabe reader as well. I just gave myself a reading challenge with this new year. So, really hoping to read at least 20 books this year.
Nice. That's awesome. So first of all, Jewel, thank you for joining the show. And obviously, I'm assuming you were not named after the pop singer from the 1990s with the same first name as you.
No, I actually have a really funny story about my name. My full name is actually Julian, but I go by Jewel. And Jewel Jones was actually supposed to be my TV name when I wanted to be a reporter way back in the day. But my mom thought that I was a boy and she was going to name me Julian
Oh,
after her favorite cousin.
okay.
And when they found out, obviously, I wasn't a boy, they just named me Julian. So,
Awesome. Well, Jewel, first of all, thank you for sharing.
absolutely.
Cool. So with that said, I do have a number of questions that just popped up based on your introduction there. Probably do a whole podcast. I'm not alone, but as everyone can see in the notes for this week's show, we are talking a little bit about traveling for work. So before getting into your experiences and what you've done, I just want to just kind of reiterate to everybody listening that, so again, I've been in corporate America for about 26 years now at this point. I started in, let's say, February of 2000, first job out of college, and here we are sitting in March of 2025. So lots and lots of years. That makes me a really, really old person. I did some rough math this past week, and I think I've gotten to 19 different sales meetings. Some sales meetings have been lots of fun in terms of really cool places. My personal preference are the ones that are in Disney World or somewhere really cool. But I've also gone to plenty of, let's say, less exciting or exotic areas like Parsippany, New Jersey, or Whippany, New Jersey. I mean, it just happens, right? They cost money. Sometimes companies do what they do. It is what it is. Every time I go traveling for work, so those are the sales meetings. I've also spent a lot of time working in sales in years past, where I would go to random places to call on SuperValu out in Minneapolis, or where else have I gone? Or HEB down in Texas, just random places in the country that normally you wouldn't necessarily go to, but work takes you there. So it takes you there. So for me, when I travel for work, I generally try to find something fun, interesting, or different about the place I go to, especially if it's a place that I usually wouldn't go to on my own. So as an example, years ago, I traveled out to, as I said before, Minneapolis to go to SuperValu. And my flight actually got canceled coming home and got delayed by a day. So I immediately booked a hotel right outside the Mall of America and spent like 9 hours just wandering around the Mall of America. I walked into a bar. I got drunk. I went bowling. I went to a movie. I went to the aquarium. I did everything you could do. The Mall of America is just sick in terms of the size. I've done all sorts of other random stuff. Jewel, you are a little bit younger than I am, as most people in life are at this point, I guess, as I'm probably, on the back half of my life, just being realistic. So let's take a step back and let me ask you this, Jewel. What is your earliest memory of traveling for work? Like, where was the first place you went, if you could remember, and anything fun or interesting about it?
Oh my gosh. It wasn't necessarily traveling for work. It was traveling to the job interview that I
Okay.
ended up taking to the job that I traveled probably the most for.
Okay.
I am a native of Chicago and I was living in Chicago at the time. And I found out about this opportunity back in at a job fair at the school that I went to for undergrad. And I went back, I ended up interviewing for this company and they actually flew me to Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
But I was also working at the time, so I had to get in super late. So it was actually a crazy experience. And I feel like it was a full circle moment for me because I got there super late because, of course, I had to work. I go to check into my hotel and they were like, well, we don't have any rooms left, like regular rooms. So we'll like give you a complimentary upgrade. They
Oh, wow.
upgraded me to this like presidential suite. It was absolutely insane. But think about like Omaha, Nebraska. No shade to anyone
Of
that's
course.
from or lives in Omaha.
Yeah, we can
But
shade
think
it.
about
That's
like
okay.
Omaha, Nebraska, and think about like the best hotel possible in Omaha, Nebraska. And it was crazy because that was such a pivotal moment in my career, and to be like upgraded and have that like go to Omaha out of all places for a job interview that really like set me up for my career was kind of crazy.
So a couple of questions there. So first of all, how was the presidential suite at the Red Roof Inn in Omaha, Nebraska? Um,
Exactly. Not quite Red Roof Inn. It was actually really nice. It was an
Okay.
embassy.
Oh,
So
nice.
it was, you know how the embassy is already like set up as suites.
Oh, yeah.
So I was already expecting like a similar setup to that, but it actually ended up being a like 2 room. It had like a full kitchen, like not a kitchenette at all.
Nice.
And there was like a living room. But the funny part is I never left out of the bedroom because I was so terrified because the room was so big.
Sure,
So
sure. Awesome. So this was Omaha, Nebraska. So it sounds like you
mhm,
did get the job, you said, right? So that set you
I
up for
did.
success there. Did you move to Omaha or did you work like from Chicago or like what was the situation with that?
It's so crazy. And this is like so crazy to think back that this is how this happened.
Okay.
So I went there for a series of interviews for a retail rep role, which at the time I thought I was going to like change the world at this company.
We all thought so at that
So there
age.
was
Yeah.
like a bunch of recent graduates were all there. We go through all these rounds of interviews and they pick their top 3 candidates, and those top 3 candidates get their pick of like the top 5 places. You basically tell them where you want to go.
Right.
So my best friend and I had already made a decision that we wanted to move to Georgia, but we didn't know exactly how we get there.
Okay.
So of course I said Georgia was my number 1 pick, and I ended up being one of those top applicants. So I got the first pick and
Awesome.
I moved to Georgia for literally 366 days.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. So had you ever like have you gone back to Omaha, Nebraska since then, or was this kind of your one and only opportunity to, I guess, let's say experience Omaha?
No, so I ended up going to Omaha so many, like I was just telling someone this story a few weeks ago. I've been to Omaha way more times than I ever wanted to go because the company that I ended up working for was headquartered there for a while. So
Gotcha.
I was there. I know it wasn't a Red Roof Inn, it was an American Inn. I stayed at that one time. It
Very
was
nice.
very interesting.
I assume that was the only time you ever got upgraded, so probably every other time was a letdown since then.
Exactly.
Right.
Pretty much.
Awesome. So again, thank you for sharing that story. And this was while you were about to graduate college, right? So this is your first role or first time after college for the most part?
I was probably fresh out of college. So I've had a couple careers.
Okay. Join the club,
So
but continue.
yes, I started out in, like I said, I have an undergrad in journalism. I wanted to be a reporter. I actually worked at NBC for a while. I worked at Fox. I worked at CBS, Fox and CBS affiliates, and I ended up working for NBC in Chicago.
Okay.
And once I got out of that around 2014, 15, I ended up taking the job with the CPG company. And that's when I was living my best life in Omaha very frequently.
Omaha, Nebraska. What a
Hmm.
great place. So I guess what I was trying to get at too was the fact that that was obviously years ago. So you were younger, fairly early in your career at that
Hmm.
point. Since then, and I'll fast forward a little bit. As you mentioned to me previous to this off the air, you are married and you do have 2 children.
Hmm.
I would imagine traveling, and again, I can speak to my experiences in a bit as well. But traveling when you're a single lady or whatever situation you had at the time, versus traveling, let's say, in current state with 2 children and a husband, it's night and day, right? It's very different experiences. I mean, I would say it's probably both positive and negative for different reasons, right? How would you
Yeah.
compare the situations, the experiences, and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So it's very, very different. When I was traveling for work prior to becoming a mom and a wife, I used to always try to make an extended trip out of any work trip. Like no matter where I was going. If I was going to Omaha, to your point, I would try to find something cool to do, like
Right.
extend my trip a little bit
Yep.
or like fly there to somewhere else and, like a quick flight back to Chicago or something like that. And I was just more adventurous then. I would probably stay out a little later. I feel like, I was younger, so
Of
I was
course.
able to bounce back a lot faster. Now when I travel for work, I am taking the latest possible flight to extend the amount of time I can have with my family.
Of course.
And I am trying to get back as soon as possible, but also really enjoying not having little feet in my back at night and, getting a full night's rest, not having to wake up and give my daughter some milk or something like that. So, very different, but I think both experiences have, it's helped me grow in some way. Now I'm very, uh, way more organized than I was when I was younger and just having to worry about myself, and a lot more prompt. I used to show up at the airport. I was one of those people who would show up at the airport 30 minutes before their flight
Oh,
board and just walk right on. Now
oh,
I need time. I'm
yeah.
a
I've
2 hour
Oh no, I have
arrival.
anxiety just thinking about that because I used to. So years ago, when,
Exactly.
when I worked for a certain cereal company, there was one colleague that I used to travel with all the time. For her, it was always a photo finish if she was going to make the flight. for me, I'm always at least 2 hours before the flight to get there, just because I mean, if people at home don't know this yet, I plan for the planning. Like I'm buffering to the buffering for the buffering. So for me, I'm waiting for everything to happen. I'd probably get to
Hmm.
the airport the night before if that were something I could possibly do. So much
Yeah.
so that like I get United Club, I have a membership for my credit card, and I just hang out
Hmm.
there for hours before, which is fine for me, and I plan the time for it. But the thought of getting to the airport like when they've already started pre-boarding, like I just get the chills just thinking about that. I just it doesn't make me feel very good.
Yeah, just unnecessary anxiety. So, yeah, like I said, I try to extend my time at home as much as I can, and that I'm definitely factoring in me getting to the airport at least 2 hours in advance um,
Absolutely.
into
Yeah.
that travel time. So,
Yeah, I mean, the fact that most airports, I mean, pretty much all of them have Wi-Fi and stuff like that, you can almost like use it as like, a piece of
exactly.
your workday too, just hang out and
Hmm.
have a drink or a snack. What I was going to say before I ask you a follow-up question is, I completely agree. For me, like traveling for work after having kids is definitely a different experience. Um, there's definitely the negative to it. Obviously, missing my family. Obviously, want to be around my wife, and my daughters. But I'll say probably my one of my favorite times. It's going to come across the wrong way, but just work with me on this one. My youngest daughter, who's 15 right now, or almost 15 right now, she was, I think, 6 weeks old at the time, and I had to travel for a sales meeting for a company I work for. So 6 week old at home, obviously I'm exhausted. No one's sleeping that much, and obviously, like I said, this is going to come across as kind of selfish, but I guess here we are at this point. Um, I had to go to the work meeting, so kind of was what it was. So once the work meeting, and this company was, let's say, known for their party atmosphere. Like everybody would stay out late, do other things, whatever else like that. Me, I would sleep about 12 hours per night at that sales meeting. So the
Hmm.
meeting went from like, let's say 8 until 5 or 8 until 6. Everybody would have dinner and go out and whatever. By about 6:30, I was in my hotel room, just collapsed and passed out. I mean, I was used to obviously having a newborn at home, and it was a lot. And like people like for days were like, Jeff, you're away from home. Why aren't you partying or doing some ridiculous stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'm not really a party animal. I never really was. I was never much of a night owl. But with that said, I was legitimately trying to bank as much sleep as I could for both what I've missed and what I was going to miss going forward. So for me,
Hmm.
that was definitely an experience. I didn't last much longer in that company after that because it was one of those companies where you kind of had to party and be one of the good old boys to kind of, let's say, move up,
Yeah.
which I'm not really one of them. But with that said, it was what it was. It was a great experience. So made the most of it,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had some
Um,
experiences like that too. It's just it gets old after a while, especially when you do it so many times. Like the first couple times it's like, "Oh, this is so cool. I'm doing this."
yeah,
And a lot of times it's for free because there's someone of a much higher level there footing the bill for you guys, but after a while it's like, "Okay."
definitely. I completely agreed. So, I mean, I've got to some really cool and some fun places, experiences, whatever else like that from a work perspective. But let me get back to you for a second. So,
Mhm.
if you had to look back at some of the work travel you've done, like what was your favorite destination, whether it be pre kids or post kids, that you've either extended it to or said, "Hey, I'm here. This is an amazing thing. Let's do what we can."
Yeah. There's so many like dissertations these days about how you're not supposed to make great friends at work, but a company that I was at for the bulk of my career, I made some really great friends and we went on a sales. I don't even remember what year that was. But anyway, we had a sales meeting in Vegas and it was
Nice,
the best time. We
awesome,
had done really well that year, so the accommodations were amazing. We like stayed at the Wynn. I had a room with like an amazing view. I was like waking up every morning, pushing a button. My curtains were opening. The bathroom was immaculate. It was amazing. And my friends and I, who I'm still fairly close with, like we kind of communicate more via social media, but they still hold like a very special place in my heart. We ended up getting tattoos while we were there.
oh wow,
So she got one for her dog at the time, and her dog recently passed away. And I like reached out to her
oh
because I knew that she had done. We had shared that moment together at that sales meeting, getting that tattoo, and I got a tattoo on my finger. And I forgot what my other friend got, but we all just wanted to do something special in that moment, knowing that eventually our careers would take us to different places, and we probably wouldn't get to experience something like that again. So that was probably my most memorable one. That was my first time also going to Dre's nightclub with
nice.
people on my sales team. It was a great time.
I'm sure it was.
And yeah, I was like standing in line. It's so crazy. I was standing in line. All of us were. And we're like I was probably like fairly early in my career, of course. And we're waiting. And then we see all these other people that were much higher up in the organization than us, like what are you guys doing standing in line? Like, come on. So we like skipped the line. It was a great time.
Nice. That's awesome. That is awesome. So I guess we'll do a little tag team now. Now I'll give a story of my own now. So a couple of stories here. So first of all, a lot of my listeners know that I love Halloween Horror Nights down in Universal Studios Orlando. I go every year. I'm not sure if I shared the story previously to the podcast listeners, but the reason I started going was back in 2012, there was a sales conference or sales meeting I used to go to in Orlando in like mid-September. It was like a Wednesday to Friday or something like that. So what I did the first year that I went there was I extended it by a day, stayed at the Hard Rock at Universal, did Halloween Horror Nights, and I was just completely hooked. So 2012 did that, 2013 did that, 2014 did that. And then I think in 2015, there was no sales conference. So at that point, I started just going down by myself without a sales meeting, just heading down there, hitting Halloween Horror Nights. And I've done it basically every year since. So at this point, it's 13, 14 years, give or take. So for me, it helped me to find my love for both Universal Studios Orlando as well as just Halloween Horror Nights and haunted houses in general, which at this point is one of my bigger passions. Another one that I'd say that was really, really memorable for me was back when I worked for a certain cereal company. I had an employee who worked out in California directly for me. So at the time I worked in Jersey. I had an employee work for me in St. Louis and one out in Los Angeles. So I visited the guy in Los Angeles and met with him for a couple of days. And then on my own, extended it. One time I stayed and went to a Los Angeles Kings hockey game, which was amazing. Another time I extended it and went to Universal Studios Hollywood, did a VIP tour, which was just super sick. VIP tour got us like off the tram. We got to go see some of the really cool houses and sets and stuff like that. From a distance, we saw the Back to the Future, Clock Tower, like things like that, which was really, really neat. So lots and lots of fun. But again, it's things where, I mean, especially at the time too, I had younger kids. So for me, I love theme parks. I love just walking around and seeing things. And obviously going with, my little kids at the time, like 4, 5, 6 years old, versus going by myself is completely different experiences, right? No bathroom breaks for the kids. Their legs are like 3 feet tall or 3 inches tall, kind of a deal. So they don't move very quickly. And there's always, sometimes tantrums. Love going with them, but obviously selfishly love going by myself sometimes as well. Need some me time.
For sure.
So, that's
so cool.
Yeah, lots and lots of fun. Anywhere else memorable, or what would you say is like outside of Vegas and obviously Omaha, Nebraska, that sticks out to you as a fantastic place that you in your mind you're thinking back to how great it was?
Florida was really good. That was at a different company. They actually just gave some amazing gifts at the meeting.
Yeah.
So it was good. Again, accommodations were beautiful. I have so many like just random pictures from that trip on the property because it was so it was just really picturesque. That was probably the best one. We went through like kind of a lull during COVID where we didn't have sales meetings. And we had to do things virtually. But yeah, definitely Vegas and Florida would probably be my top 2.
Nice. What part was it? Disney or a different part of Florida?
No, I think it was like Orlando or something. We didn't go to Disney though. We when you go there, you pretty much stay on the property. There was another time we went to San Antonio, and that one was really fun because that was my first time like going off aside from when we went to Vegas, like going off the property with a ton of coworkers. We like went to some random hookah bar. Nice. We got like bottle service. It was absolutely insane, but it was a great time. Yeah, I think that was maybe Texas. There's so many. And once you go to one, you've like been to them all, unless you go somewhere, again, like Vegas, where the accommodations are just like smack dab in the city. But when you go to like Phoenix or somewhere in Texas, like all those resorts start to look the same. Yeah. So I think I always get like 3 of them confused because the property looks exactly the same.
Yeah, totally get it. I think I've gone to a few in Arizona, which look exactly the same. Didn't do much for me. I mean, for me, I'm not really much of a scenic guy. I'm more of a theme park guy or stuff like that or whatever, or sports teams guy or whatever. I will say it's the point you mentioned earlier as well. Like years ago, a lot of these sales meetings would give out a lot of like, let's say really great tchotchkes.
Oh my gosh.
My wife and I started dating back in 2001. I think it was 2003. She went to a sales meeting and that's where she got her first iPod from. So like, they're giving out iPods to everybody, like other meetings that neither of us went to, digital cameras, flat screen TVs. Yeah. Nowadays, I think they've definitely reined that in quite a bit. Maybe some companies still offer up some fun stuff like that, but for the most part, it's not what it was years ago. But it was definitely an exciting time years and years ago to see what you come home with, or like what got shipped to your house after the meeting was over.
Absolutely. I got some like custom Nikes. One time they had like a setup, a computer setup, and you can like design your own Nikes. We
Oh
got like
wow,
Bose headphones before, like crazy stuff. So,
that's pretty awesome. Pretty
mhm.
awesome. So, with that said, I know earlier you had mentioned in your intro about books and about running. So, I think you had said
Mhm.
your goal for this year is to read 20 books. Was that correct?
Yes, and I'm struggling a little bit. I've been trying to get into these Colleen Hoover books. I'm staring at it right now because I was supposed to take it on the flight with me, and I ended up packing it in my suitcase by accident on the way back.
Ah,
So I'm trying to get to chapter 5. I'm reading Verity. It's supposed to be really good, but I need to get to chapter 5 because that's where it picks up apparently. So,
got it. Got it. So, you had said 20 books. So, as a data geek, I obviously have to ask this as a follow up question. What is that compared to? So, in years past, like, do you know how many you read last year, or like, where did the number 20 come from?
so I was reading a lot of parenting books. My kids are fairly young, so I've probably read probably 5 or 6 parenting books that I keep referring back to since my son was born. So that's probably not that great.
Okay.
I'll go back to the same books over and over again. I'm like a creature of habit. Like I watch the same shows or the same series over and over again. I'll read the same books over and over again. I'm looking at my bookshelf now and I'm like, there's like 3 on there that I'll refer back to when I just need to like escape or like just get lost in something and I don't want to watch a show or something. So yeah, I'm trying to get back into books that I actually enjoy that aren't like self-help stuff or like teaching me how to be a better parent. So
I get that. So, I mean, from a routine perspective, I mean, I've said in the podcast before, like from a movie perspective, there's some movies that I watch every year. So I
mhm.
watch Back to the Future like clockwork every year. I
Yep.
watch Office Space pretty much every year. There's a couple of things that
Mhm.
like whenever I'm looking for something on a Saturday morning, I'm up early. I'm like, you know what, let's just put that on because I know I'm gonna like it. It's kind of like a comfort
Mhm.
movie. It makes you feel good. From a reading perspective, I've tried reading. I mean, I can literally read now that I have reading glasses. I can read a little bit better. But in terms of actually reading, like I don't really get a lot of joy out of reading. Like
Yeah.
I have a Kindle because everyone else in my house has a Kindle, and also because I love technology, it's just what I do. And I've bought a lot of books, I guess, aspirationally, but
Mhm.
like I have a list a mile long of books that I bought, put on there, just haven't gotten to. I have a
Yeah.
bunch of, let's say, half read books, and I do a lot of like self therapy via books as well. There's a couple of books
Mhm.
that I go back to kind of figure out like, hey, certain things that I how to deal with situations, stuff like that. I've also read a bunch of like personal finance books per my initial mention earlier on the show about what I'd like to aspire to be and what I like to learn about, whatever else like that. But in terms of like novels or stuff like that, like I would rather just watch the movie.
Yeah.
Like everyone else in my house has read Hunger Games, they've read like Harry Potter. Like reading those books do absolutely nothing for me. Like I would rather
Yeah.
someone else do the work and kind of set it up for me and kind of just sit back and relax. So, but I mean, we all consume this stuff in different ways.
Yeah. I'm really trying to just challenge myself to do new things and I feel like that's how I started getting back into running, like back into the gym a lot. And we used to read a lot when I was a kid. I remember vividly my sister getting into trouble and like no devices would ever get taken away. My parents would take her books and she would be so upset, like bawling her eyes out. We used to just read a lot. And I don't know why we stopped. I think life just started to happen. I went away to college and I just kind of fell by the wayside. I actually started having to read for class and it was not fun and it just became something that I didn't do. So I'm just trying to get back into it. I love getting lost in a good book. And that's what I always think back to. Like, oh my gosh, I remember when I read The Hate You Give before the movie came out. And I got so lost in that book and it was so good. And I like to read the book and then watch the movie. So,
Read the book, then watch the movie. So I
mhm,
guess I think my daughters are the same thing too. So is it because you want to kind of visionary like see it the way that you think it should be seen and then kind of watch
exactly.
the movie because once you watch the movie then you've kind of got the characters created in your mind of how they're supposed to be.
Hmm.
Like if you watch Harry Potter before reading the books, Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter, but if you
Hmm.
just read the books first, Harry Potter could look like or be anybody, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's always so I'm like, she doesn't look like that. Based on how they described her, she didn't wear things like that, or that wasn't how her hair was. Yeah.
So in your experiences, do you generally prefer the book or the movie? So I know you said book first then
Mm,
movie. Do you ever sit back and say, you know what, I think the movie nailed it, or you know what, I don't think the book was detailed enough, I mean the movie wasn't detailed enough, so I love the book more?
yeah, definitely probably the latter. I like the book always has more detail. And to your point,
Of
like
course.
you have this vision of what the characters look like based on the description that the book gives and like what their mannerisms are. And then you see the movie and you're like, ooh, they could have casted someone different for that role because that person doesn't even embody the, boldness that the XYZ character had. So I
I
typically
hear
prefer
you.
the
I mean,
book.
gotcha. Yeah, there's a couple of books to movies that me and my daughters have done where they read the books and watched the movies together. Divergent and Maze Runner. Those are
Hmm.
ones that I've considered reading the book because I love the concept of Maze Runner. I love the concept of Divergent, but the acting was
Hmm.
atrocious. Like the acting is just really, really bad. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, once the storyline kind of tends to taper off, the movie's nothing because
Yeah.
the actors just don't cut it. So
Hmm.
actors can definitely make or break. I mean, my family just watched Twilight again. Also, I think they're probably back to the books as well. So
Oh
who
my
knows?
gosh. That's so funny. All the things that the kids are doing now and like discovering, and they're like, it's so crazy. People are dressing up as like Soldier Boy for
Oh,
school these days. And I'm like, guys, that was like 10 years ago where people were really dressing like that. And it wasn't. Like to your earlier point, like we're definitely getting up there.
well, it's funny to your point. I think it was one of the Sirius stations, either like Y2K or Tens or something like that. And Soldier Boy was playing, and my daughters were like, "Wait, this song's like 15 years old." And I was like, "Yes, it did not come out
Yeah.
recently. This has been out for a while. Like,
Hmm.
not necessarily when I was a kid, but like definitely around the time they were born." And they were just blown away at how old the song was. Like, it's just one of those funny things.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Super crazy. So you also mentioned that you like to run. So for me, as many people know, I do like to run. I consider myself more of a completist versus a completist. I'm not
Hmm.
fast and I'm not great, but I definitely run against myself. So I have a spreadsheet, again, real shocker with my trackers,
Hmm.
of every single race that I've ever run. So anytime I run a 5K or 10K or whatever, I can look to see what my time was previously because I'm not looking to win the race. I'm not looking to beat anybody
Hmm.
else. I'm looking to see, can I beat my previous time or can I hit the time that I got when I was 40 years old or something like that. Because for me, we're all built and wired differently. I think it's unrealistic for me to say, hey, I'm going to be faster than Jewel or I'm going to be faster than that person over there. But for me to say I'm going to be faster than me, I mean, I'm just going against father time at this point. So
Yeah.
if I can beat that at some point, I'll be pretty much okay. From a running perspective, like, do you run races? Do you just kind of run the treadmill? Kind of like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Did I say I liked running?
You did in your
If
intro.
I
You said you
did,
love
I
some
did
running.
not mean to say that. I don't like it and I don't dislike it.
Okay,
I
we're neutral to it.
dread the drive to the park or the gym or wherever I'm going to run that day. But once
Okay.
I start to do it, I love it. I just like, again, like reading a good book. I just like to run, get in a good groove, overcome that first like 7 minutes of absolute dread. And that runner's high starts to kick in. And then my mind starts to wander. And then I look up and I've like run 4 miles. So I've been trying to get my friends to do a 10K with me. They
Nice.
won't do it, but
Oh,
I want to do high rocks eventually. So I've been just trying to condition. I heard it's a lot of running. So I've just been trying to condition my body to be as strong as I possibly can to get through that with all the weights and running that you'll have to do for a race like that. But
what is High Rocks?
so it's basically like a CrossFit competition where you go through a bunch of different stations and do like a bunch of different crazy workouts. So they have like a rower and you do like a burpee station, lunges, like a bunch of different things, wall balls, all kinds of crazy stuff. And there's also like running in between all of that. So you have, I think a good time for a single is maybe an hour or something. I haven't done a ton of research around like the timing and stuff because I'm not trying to psych myself out. I'm just trying to be ready for whenever I decide to like bite the bullet and do it. So
Is that something you do like an Orange Theory or like a CrossFit place, or like where does this kind of thing take place?
I knew we were going to talk about Orange Theory.
Okay, great.
I am 100% Orange Theory girly. Love
All
it.
right, share it.
It has been so instrumental in me getting back in the gym post having my daughter, and even before I had my daughter, I'd started back going, but so good. It's somewhat like that. I think that would have been, if I wasn't doing Orange Theory, I probably wouldn't have any other exposure to the rowing machine.
Okay.
But that consists of rowing, floor exercises, and then a lot of treadmill work. So, and that's one thing I love about it because a lot of the other gyms, they don't have, they're always like, oh, you can get, you can increase your endurance or get different types of hit workouts in other ways. You don't necessarily have to run, but I do enjoy like getting on the treadmill and getting a good sweat. So
Got it. So what does it do for you? So like in terms of goals from a workout perspective, because like I think I've said in the past, like for me, my main thing is at 47, it's tougher for me to keep weight off. Like when I was
Hmm.
younger, I could eat two Whoppers, large fries, and a soda, and I'd lose 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Like right now, just thinking about that, I gained 3 pounds. So it's definitely
Hmm.
tougher as I've gotten later in life, especially after I've crossed the 40 years old barrier. Um,
Yeah.
so for me, like the main reason why I do run and work out is so that way I can, I guess, keep weight off. You're obviously younger and in a different situation than me. Like, is it something like, do you enjoy it? Do you have fun with it? Kind of like, and I know you said you want to try to hopefully get into that competition at some point.
Yeah.
Like, do you dread it? Do you get excited for it? Kind of like, where's your head at?
Now I love it. It took me
Okay,
a long time to get to this point though. So I've been back consistently in the gym since September, like late September of 2023.
awesome.
So my daughter was born in July. I started back going to the gym as soon as I got clearance from my doctor. And again, it took me a long time to get into that rhythm. But to your point, like I knew I'm getting older. My metabolism is not what it used to be. And before I got pregnant with my son, I was going to the gym a lot and I felt like I wasn't eating that great, but I was still like maintaining my weight.
Right.
But again, like once I hit 30, there's something in your metabolism that happens. And I was like, oh my gosh, this takes so much work for me now. So I knew that I had to incorporate something into more of a lifestyle change. And like that's what I wanted to do. So I didn't put a ton of pressure on myself and I still don't. Like my motto is discipline over deprivation. So if I wake up and I have a craving for chocolate cake, I'll have a slice of chocolate cake, but I'm also going to make sure that I go to the gym. And that's been like the biggest thing that's helped me stay consistent and like honestly just kept me disciplined. And I don't believe in like motivation. I think it's fake. You
Okay.
just have to you do it or you don't. So I just consider myself to be a very disciplined person, or I try to be. And that's why I'm like, okay, I need to be disciplined and read these 20 books. I need to be disciplined to make sure I'm going to the gym, but also enjoying the things that I'm, you know, trying to be disciplined at the same time. So
Makes total sense. Just getting back to the working out in the gym again for a second. So for myself as well, my wife Beth and I do oftentimes run together or go to the gym together. So that does motivate me a little bit as well. Like knowing like, hey,
mhm.
if she's going to go, I'll go as well, or vice versa.
Yeah.
We've done a bunch of like Disney half marathons together and various races together, and like
That's
the fact that we can kind
cool.
of push each other to do stuff definitely helps. I mean, Disney races for me are the best in the fact that
Mhm.
it's running. If you're going to run a half marathon or a marathon, Disney's the place to go. Running through the castle, with nobody in the park is pretty cool. So it's a great experience running through the parks and stuff like that.
I'm gonna have to
Um,
look into that. That sounds
it's
cool.
definitely a lot of fun. We're actually doing. So my wife just did the Disney 10K about 2 weeks ago over at Disney
Okay.
World at Epcot. Beth and I are doing the Disney either 10K or half marathon. We're still on the fence, whatever. Next January, so they have a bunch of those race weekends throughout the year. I mean, it's brilliant on their part. This is like 30 years ago. They would have kind of seasonal periods like peaks and spikes, but they've
Okay.
created a season like when there was no season. So like weeks or weekends where there would usually be nobody in the park. They've created
Mhm.
events so that way people just have to travel there. So races or festivals and stuff like that. So they've definitely, they've definitely mastered that whole marketing thing in terms of
That's
how
so
to get
cool.
people to the park when nobody needs or wants to go to the park.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
my
crazy.
husband, he to your point, that he'll say, like, I can't have people looking at me and being like, wow, how he bagged this baddie. So we both got we both got like back in the gym. And also my parents are getting older and I'm like, telling my mom all the time, like, just go to the gym and walk on the treadmill.
Right.
She's very active at work, but I'm like, I just need you to do some extra. And she's having a hard time getting into a rhythm. So I figure if I can get into this rhythm now, and we could just, my husband and I both said this, maintain this for the rest of our lives. Like our kids won't be calling us like, Mom, you need to take care of yourself. Dad, stop smash and bruise and go for a walk. So
That's awesome. Well, it's funny you say that because so Beth and I'm not sure if I mentioned to you before, is our goal is to retire in Orlando. So our goal
I
is when
love
we do
that.
eventually stop working, leave Jersey, go down to Florida, pay
Hmm.
no state income tax, live somewhere between Disney World, Universal Studios, get our annual passes for everything, and just basically like live, retire, and eventually die in the Disney World area. But like the idea behind it too is at any given day, we'll just go and just do a mile or 2 miles walk around Epcot, right? So basically, walk around the international area or do something fun because I mean that's what we enjoy doing. So why not make our retirement one big vacation? So it gives us places to walk. Weather-wise, it's definitely going to be a lot nicer than it's up in the Northeast. I mean, outside of the hurricanes, but you shouldn't get much snow, shouldn't be too cold. So for us, that's kind of what our thought was as well, is in terms of retirement when we get older, it's easier to kind of work out or do stuff like that as opposed to, oh, it's too cold or whatever. Like even now, like I try to take walks during the day, but in the winter, it gets just way too cold. So I'll be on the treadmill if I can sometimes, but sometimes I'll get lazy and won't get my steps in. So I'll have no excuse when I'm down there, which is nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. In my retirement plan, I hope this becomes a full circle moment. Try to buy like an Orange Theory franchise or something. So I have no excuse not to go.
Very awesome. Right. You got to, I mean, if you're going to be owner or the manager of the place, you got to look the part, right?
Got to look the part, right?
Definitely. Awesome. Well, Jewel, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for all of your time. Is there anything that you'd like to support, promote, or plug before we finish for the week?
Yeah. Also on my my discipline over motivation list for 2025, I'm trying to, increase my engagement on my social platforms. So I did finally start up my YouTube channel. So yeah, if all your viewers want to go and see some lifestyle content, I also do some reviews. I'm actually in the process of editing a video right now on like my Q1 favorites. Q1 isn't over yet, but figure get ahead of the curve before people start posting all their favorites videos for Q1. So my YouTube is Jewel Gem 2020. And that's also my TikTok. My TikTok engagement is horrible at the moment because the algorithm, if you're not posting at all times, you just don't get into it. But I try to stay kind of current on there.
Nice. I'll tag it when I post the show. But for those of you that don't know how to spell Jewel Gem, it's JEWELGEM 2020. That's how it is, all one word. I've seen your TikTok. It's definitely been sent to my FYP page from time to time. So definitely cool stuff. I agree with you. TikTok is weird. I mean, I'm not sure what happened with the day or two that it went down last month.
Yeah.
If that screwed up the algorithm as well. I do still have my one video that went viral that hit 2.5 million views about a year ago, which I'm really excited about. I mean, I've never really gotten past about 1,000 or 2,000 since then. So I'm definitely living on the high from the 2.5 million.
That's awesome.
Got a lot more likes and followers from that too. So I'm sure they're a lot more bored after that one video. So, I mean, life goes on. Anything else you'd like to say before I close this out for the week?
No, thanks so much for having me, Jeff. This has been great. I know we've been talking about it, for a little bit. So nice that we finally were able to make it happen.
Awesome. Well, Joel, I do appreciate your time. And as always, thank you so much for joining. I want to remind all of our listeners, watchers, and anybody else out there, the show can be found on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can reach the show directly for email at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com if you have any business inquiries or whatever else you want to do. Speaking of business inquiries, the good boys over at jeffseltzer.com have officially sponsored this show once again. So shout out to everybody, including Marcus and Daniel over at jeffseltzer.com. Definitely please share this show with all of your friends, your family, your neighbors' friends, your family's neighbors, all those people. We are available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Pandora, all the fun places. With that said, this has been an amazing show. As always, thank you so much. And we'll have more next week with another amazing guest. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Awesome.